Hey, what's going on, AP people? We have chapter 4 for you today. Let's get going. All right, we're going to be talking about the Chesapeake Bay colonies. And please know that the Chesapeake Bay colonies are made up of two specific colonies, Maryland here in the yellow, and Virginia here in the darker yellow as well. Notice that in between the two is the Chesapeake Bay. So the Chesapeake Bay colonies only refer to Maryland and Virginia, but do know that they are considered part of the South and they are predominantly agriculture as well. In the Chesapeake, there is a shorter lifespan than people living in New England, and this is due to the spread of disease. And half of the people living in the Chesapeake did not live until their 20s. They're actually having midlife crises at 10 and buying fancy boats. Bad joke. Okay, I'm sorry. Few people had grandparents, unlike the New England colonies, because of how quickly people died and how young people died. So it's very rare for somebody to have a grandparent. Please keep in mind that tobacco exhausted land and forced people to move out west. When they're moving out west, this will lead to conflicts with Native Americans who are living on that land. And this is somewhat of related to Bacon's Rebellion, which we'll talk about. The more tobacco people sell, the more use for land. And there was the predominant labor source in the Chesapeake Bay was indentured servants, and this was for a very long time. And indentured servants were people who came over from Europe and they had their passage paid for in exchange for several years of service, often 5 to 7, depending on the location and where they're coming from, and a whole bunch of factors. Something that goes along with indentured servants is the Headright system, and the Headright system is very important to know. It provides 50 acres of land to whoever, and in this case, often it was the plantation owner, pays the passage of an immigrant or indentured servant. So if you are wealthy enough and you own a plantation, you need some workers, you can pay for an indentured servant to come over and work on your behalf for 5 to 7 years. In exchange for doing that, you also will receive 50 additional acres of land. So clearly, when this question comes down to who does this benefit, it benefits the rich. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. The rich are benefiting because they're getting more land. And the more land, the more crops they could grow. The more crops, the more money they make. Indentured servants in the Chesapeake is the predominant source of labor until this event, Bacon's Rebellion. This happens in Virginia. Bacon he leads a group of former indentured servants, and they go on a killing spree of Native Americans, and they burn down Jamestown in Virginia. Now let's talk about the causes of it. More and more settlers didn't have land, and this is particularly true for indentured servants. When their time was up, they did not have any land, and these were immigrants from the Headright system. Here's Governor Berkeley, and the indentured servants Bacon and his followers felt that he was too friendly to the Native Americans and did not offer adequate protection, and this angered the settlers. So they went on a revolt. They forced Berkeley to flee, and he eventually restores order later. Why we really care about this is there is a new labor force, and these are slaves from Africa. The question is why? What is unique about slaves that is not true about indentured servants? They never get their freedom and they're never promised any land. So this forces many people to switch the labor force over to African slaves. And another significant effect of Bacon's Rebellion is it illustrates class tensions between the rich and the poor. Middle Passage. This is the journey for Africans coming over as slaves to the Americas, and it's part of the triangular trade. And when we're talking about the triangular trade, it is between Europe and Africa and the Americas, and it forms a triangle. And predominantly what's coming from Africa to the Americas is slaves. And it would be on a boat, like the couple pictures you're going to see here, very tight quarters. And 20% of Africans died on this part of the journey. So, and they were very tight living quarters, as you can see here. People had very little room to sleep. They were tied together, and if you look here at the feet down here, you can actually see that they are chained together as well. Just an absolutely horrible circumstance to be a part of. Now we're going to talk about Africans as slaves once they get to America. And we're going to talk about rebellions did occur, although not very frequently. And there's a couple rebellions that you should be familiar with. And why didn't they occur frequently? Please keep this in mind for every rebellion. Every time there is a rebellion, the South is going to clamp down more and more and be harsher on slaves. In New York City in 1712, there was a rebellion, and a dozen whites are killed in the rebellion, and 20 blacks were executed. In South Carolina in 1739, we had the Stono River Rebellion, or the Stono River Uprising. This is something that does appear frequently on AP released exams. 50 blacks rebel and they try to go to Spanish Florida. They're stopped by the militia. They do kill whites along the way. They steal ammunition, and they try to go to Florida where they can be free. No matter the slave rebellion, whether it's the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, not a single slave rebellion ever matched the scale of Bacon's rebellion. Let's talk about New England. In New England, there are going to be towns because there are lots of families living close together. Education for Puritans is very, very important. And for every 50 families, there are mandated schools. And there's clean water and cooler temperatures, which slows the spread of killer diseases. So those diseases that were killing people in the Chesapeake, not so much in New England. Life expectancy is much higher. And if you're an immigrant, you could be expected to add 10 years to your life if you were to come to New England. Longer life expectancy in towns equals closer knit families. It was very often you would see grandparents in New England. Population increased from procreation, not just immigration. So this is one of the few areas where population increased naturally. And women, when they married their husbands, they were expected to give up property if they owned it. Halfway Covenant in the Salem Witch Trials. The Halfway Covenant, the goal of this was to increase membership in the Puritan Church. But it did sacrifice religious purity, meaning that certain people were admitted that would not be admitted before. This deals with baptizing the children of some church members. This increase in membership separates the elect or the really, really select few church members from everybody else in society. And we have the Salem witch trials, which is about religion. It exposes some issues in New England. And most of the accused were from the merchant class making money. So if you were accused of being a rich, most likely you would have money. And the accusers were mostly poor farmers. And this shows tensions between the rich and the poor. The Salem witch trial shows tensions between the rich and the poor. Okay, that's it for chapter 4. If you have questions, comments, suggestions, please do one of two things. Either email me, leave them in the comments. Please explain this more. Hey, dude, I think this would be a really good idea for a video. Please leave that info for me. I'm always looking for more information, more videos to do. Please subscribe if you have not already. You will get updates every single time directly to your email every time that I create a new video. It'll be very helpful. Good luck on any tests that you may have, especially the one at the end of the year in May, on the AP exam in May. And remember, you love AP United States history. Have a good day, guys.